In the last video, we talked about the traditional approach to managing background and text color on your website with automatic CSS. In this video, we are going to talk about the newer approach, the contextual approach to managing background and text color. Let me go ahead and share my screen. We are back on ghost.org. Now, with the traditional approach, if you remember, we were concerned with identifying the actual colors that we were being asked to use in various places on this page. With the contextual approach, we don't have to worry about specific colors. What we have to worry about is dark versus ultra dark and light versus ultra light. And essentially, we're going to be doing the same thing when it comes to text, but the difference is going to be dark versus dark muted and light versus light muted. Now, again, I want to preface this with this may take a little bit for you to wrap your brain around. This is a different approach. This is a new approach. This is an approach that you probably have not seen anywhere else. But I want you to give it a little bit of extra patience and try your best to understand it, experiment with it, because this approach does offer tremendous benefits. It's going to make your workflow faster. It's going to make your website more flexible and rethemable. And it does have another benefit in what we call automatic color relationships. So let me go ahead and hop into the builder. And you can see that we are back on our blank slate. I've removed everything that we did in the traditional approach video. And I'm going to start by adding our 10 sections back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. So now what I'm going to look at is what they're asking me to do with the background colors. Again, we're going to ignore this hot pink like little overlay thing. We already discussed that in the first video. It's not really a part of this tutorial. Okay, so we have a light background right here, which is just white. That is the website's default color as we discussed in the first video. So when you encounter a default background color, just like when you encounter default text color, there are no decisions to be made and there is nothing to be done. So you simply skip this section. This section is white as well, so you simply skip this section. And now we encounter our first objectively dark background, right? And so all we are trying to figure out is that dark or is that ultra dark? That's all we have to do. Figure that out. Is that dark or ultra dark? How do you figure that out? The way you figure it out is you look at the rest of the design and say, is there anything darker than that? So I go down, no. The answer is no. The answer is no. That's the same color. No, 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 no. Yes. Okay, we found something that is darker. So automatic, did we find anything else darker than that? No. So we have two darks. We have this, which is going to be ultra dark. And then if we go back up, this is going to be dark. And you're going to see these patterns play out across many, many, many different websites. This is very, very common, okay? Okay, now on the light side of things, what do we see? Well, white, ignore it. Ignore it because that's the default website color. Ignore the default website color. Ignore, ignore, ignore because that's dark. We already figured that out. Ah, light right here. So now we have light and ultralight. We have to figure out, is there anything lighter than this or a shade darker than this? So we go down, nope. Ignore, ignore, nope, already figured that one out. Nope, ignore, same color, okay? And then we're down to the, no, there's nothing. This is the only light version. So now we ask ourselves, could there be anything maybe lighter than that? And actually, because of the way, and this is just speaking from experience, but it doesn't matter either way because you can actually change this later. But speaking from experience, I would say that there could be a section lighter than this. And in fact, if we maybe take a trip to a different page, go to creators, okay? Right here. This is not white. This is like an ultralight version, it appears, of that other color that we were just looking at, okay? Now, it is hard to eyeball it. Yeah, that's definitely lighter than this. So you would want to inspect it and measure it out, or you're given a brand style guide and you could just look at the brand style guide and make these determinations based on how those colors and shades are used on an actual design. But we're simplifying things. What we're doing is we're abstracting away the actual color into just darks and lights, okay? And I'm going to show you why we do this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the builder and I am going to just use this home page to basically start changing the colors of sections. This one right here, I go 1, 2, I skip 2 sections, and we're gonna go right to this dark one, and I'm gonna show you what I do. So I skip this one, I go right to this one, and I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do here. So same thing, right click the classes area, and type BG just like we did before. The difference is in the traditional approach, I cared about the name of the color and I went and I chose that actual color, which is base, right? But in this instance, I don't care about the color. I'm actually going to come up to this area where it says contextual background colors, and I'm either going to choose ultra dark or dark. Now, we already decided that is dark, okay? It's not ultra dark. We have an ultra dark that's going to be used in the footer. This is just dark. So I'm going to choose BG dark, and it's going to add it. BG dark, notice no reference to the name of any color. It is just BG dark, that's it, okay? Now let's look. We're going to go down. What did we determine this was? BG light. And then BG dark again. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say BG and I'm going to choose light. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to write BG and I'm going to choose dark. So we've got dark, light, dark. Then we come down and we see what else. So there's white, ignore it. Back to dark. Okay, so we're going to ignore a section. We're going to go here and we're going to choose dark. All right, what do we do next? Ignore, and then light, okay? So we're gonna ignore, and then we're gonna come down to BG light, and then this one is BG ultra dark, okay? I'm gonna save, and I'm going to go to the front end to take a look at what we've got. So there's our scenario, okay? Now you might be totally confused right now because you're like, Kevin, what the heck, man? Those aren't even the colors that are supposed to be used on this website. Okay, you're right. Let me pull up automatic CSS. We'll pull it up on the front end this time. And I want to go to backgrounds and text, backgrounds. We can do this in the builder. Either way, it doesn't matter. Okay, we're just happen to be on the front end, so let's do it on the front end. And this will show you the power of this approach. Right now, if I go to backgrounds, here is dark, ultra dark, light, and ultra light. Here's where I set the values of those things. Remember, this is just an abstraction. I've abstracted away. Instead of choosing actual colors, I've used new abstractions called dark, ultra dark, light, and ultra light, and I can actually map them to anything that I want. So dark is not neutral dark, it's gonna be base dark. Okay, base dark. And now look what actually it's not even base dark, it's base. Okay, so look what that became. All right, it became base. Now, ultra dark is gonna be base ultra dark. So now my footer just updated. Now my light is gonna be base light, that's correct, so it becomes that. And then ultralight we weren't even using, but if we were using ultralight, it's probably gonna be base ultralight. So I can just go ahead and set that to right there. So now I have an ultralight version that I can use when I want it to be even lighter than this light background color right here, but still not pure white. And remember, from the past video, pure white is set right here as the website's default background color. So let me show you an example of how powerful this is, okay? One, when we are building the website, we can go much faster now because we're not concerned with remembering colors or referencing colors. We're only concerned with, is that a dark background or an ultra dark background? And then you call it up. Is that a light background or an ultralight background? And then you call it up. And then in terms of retheming the website later or changing decisions later, remember when I was using BG base something, right? I was committing to the base palette, which means if I change my mind, like on this footer down here, I don't want that to be base ultra dark anymore. I want that to be black, pure black. So with the new contextual approach, that was the ultra dark. And anything that was ultra dark, that was using base ultra dark, I want that to be black now. This website's ultra dark background color is now black. So I can just say black. And everywhere I've used base ultra dark is now black. I don't have to go remove. See, what I would have to do in the old version, I would have to go remove all the references to base ultra dark and replace them with black. But I don't have to do that anymore because I'm using not colors, I'm using just dark, ultra dark, light, ultra light, and the color can be mapped at any time and remapped at any time. So there's tremendous flexibility in this approach, tremendous rethemability in this approach, along with the maintainability and scalability that we're always looking for. Let me go ahead and set this back, base, ultra dark. And now what I want to do is I want to hop over and talk about how this works with text. And then you're going to see a magic trick that this kind of contextual approach affords us, okay? All right, so I'm going to hop back into the builder and I am going to add a heading and I'm going to add text, okay? So we open up the automatic CSS panel. We're gonna hop back into Ghost and we're gonna say, what is the default color? We did the same thing. What is the default color of this text? Well, we already determined it's base ultra dark. And so when I go into the builder and I go to text, default text color is what? Text dark, which maps to right here, which is base ultra dark, okay? But the same concept applies. We're no longer thinking about text in terms of what color is that text. For the most part, okay? There's gonna be outliers, but for the most part, if we look at Ghost, right? Yes, there is a primary colored text right here, but that's just like an accent to this heading, okay? This heading is that color. I come down, look at that, same color. Come down, now we have whites. Now we come down. Oh, look, we're back to the darks. It's just darks and lights, guys. That's all it is darks and lights. Now, when something is an actual color outside of just darks and lights of neutrals, then I'm going to show you how to handle that. No problem whatsoever. But for the look at all, the majority of what we're dealing with is darks and lights, darks and lights, darks and lights, darks and lights. But not just darks and lights. Look at this. The same way there is a hierarchy with headings versus text. Notice the heading is thicker and bigger. And notice it's also darker. Okay, so that's a very dark, and then this is what we call a muted dark, okay? It's still dark, but it's a muted dark, and that creates a hierarchy, a color hierarchy and a contrast hierarchy between the headings and the text, okay? We need a way to manage that. Well, guess what? We've already built in a way to manage that. So we're gonna call this dark, where this might be dark muted. Now look at light. Are they doing the same thing with light? Oh, they are. Light muted. It's a less contrasty version of that light color up here. And again, I don't care what color it actually is, whether it's white or base ultra light or neutral ultra light, a shade of gray, it doesn't matter. I'm just thinking in terms of light versus dark versus muted versus not muted, okay? And that's how we're gonna manage our text. So I come up here and let me go into the builder again. Let's get rid of our front end preview for now. So text dark is the default, but if I want this text right here, like let's put some ipsum in here, okay? So we're gonna do ipsum short. By the way, that's a recipe in automatic CSS. You can do @ which is calling a recipe. Ipsum short is the name of the recipe, and when I hit semicolon, it's gonna give me it's gonna give me the ingredients of the recipe, right? Which in this case is lorem ipsum text. Let's say I want this text to be dark muted, okay, so that I get that contrast going. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna close the panel right here. I'm gonna right click the class area and I'm gonna type text. Remember how in the traditional approach, we changed the color of text by saying text and then choosing a color, right? Choosing a color, choosing a color. Now I'm not gonna choose a color. I'm gonna go up here to contextual text colors and I'm gonna see that I have dark and dark muted. I'm gonna click on dark muted. It's gonna apply, it actually didn't apply the class. Let's try that again. Sometimes bricks, it doesn't register, okay? That is now dark muted text. Again, I don't care if it's base, neutral, whatever. I'm just dark muted. And then same thing on light muted. But here's where we need to show you a magic trick. Remember in the traditional approach where when I had a dark background and I added text, it was dark text by default because that's what I told the website I wanted it to be, okay? Watch what happens when I use this new contextual approach and I add text, okay? I'm gonna add a heading to this section and I'm gonna add text to this section. What do we have here? It is already determined that this is a dark background, and so it's gonna need light text, and it's done it for me. This is what we call automatic color relationships, okay? Now, I can still come up here and type text and say, you know what, I want light muted. And now I get the light muted version of that text. I'm essentially doing exactly what's happening here with zero setup. Well, it's not zero setup. It works out of the box, but I do want to configure it just a little bit, okay? So let's talk about how to configure it. I'm going to open the automatic CSS panel and I'm going to look for relationships. And it says when we have a light background, what is the text color going to be? Text on light background is referencing text dark, and text on ultralight background is referencing text dark. Text on dark background is referencing text light. Text on ultra dark background is referencing text light as well. Okay, so this is where your color relationships are managed. So this out of the box is text light. Where's text light defined? Remember, these are just abstractions. Go back to text. Here's light. It's white, okay? And then light muted is white trans 80. Now, let me show you something. I'm going to go with red here on light muted, and you can see that is where text light muted is being used. Now, what is the value of text light muted? I can go white trans and I can do 70. I can do 60. How much do you want to mute it? A transparent color is a very easy and simple way to manage this. But you could absolutely go with like base light, something like that. You could go with base semi-light, okay? Which, by the way, we haven't configured yet, so it has more hue, or it's same hue, has more saturation, okay, and isn't the exact lightness we want it to be, but I can go in and easily customize that, okay? But my point is, you have your light and you have your light muted, which can be any value you want. You just have to make sure that they make sense. In this case, I might do white trans 70. I want to check that to make sure it passes color contrast checks for accessibility. If it doesn't, bump it up a little bit, okay? White trans 80, but I'm still creating a juxtaposition between light and light muted. And notice that it did the relationship for me automatically. Let's go down to this section down here where we were using BG Ultra Dark, and let's see what's going on down here. So let's do heading and let's do text. Okay, still it's using white, okay? If we go back to relationships, text on ultra dark background is using text light. Now you could come in here and say red, and now it's gonna make that text red. So whenever you use an ultra dark background, you get red text. I don't know why you would wanna do that, but I'm showing you the flexibility of these relationships and how you can automatically determine relationships like this. I'm gonna say text light. Now you could say base light here and base light there and base ultra light here. Okay, so when it's a dark background, we use ultralight text, and when it's a very dark background, we can just use light text, and we can really dial in the exact kind of contrast ratios that we're looking for. Point being, you have full control over all of this. You can make all of these decisions yourself. And what happens is, when we're building, we are now in a scenario where we don't have to remember colors, either for backgrounds or text. We don't have to reference anything. I can come back to this project 3 months later and I don't care what colors are being used. I can tell just dark, ultra dark, light, ultra light. I want dark here. I want ultra dark here. I want light here. I want ultra light here. Don't care if they're using base. Don't care if they're using neutral or secondary or whatever they're using on this website. I just know dark or ultra dark, light or ultra light. And when I'm dealing with text, I know dark text versus light text and light muted or dark muted. And then what I'm allowed to do is just fly through the actual development of the site because I don't have to reference things anymore. I don't have to remember things anymore. I can just use these contextual variables. And then at the end of the day, when I'm all said and done, I have control over those areas to where I don't have to remove classes and add classes, remove variables and add variables when things need to change. I can change them from one single source of truth. Now, can we do this with variables as well? When we're like, let's say we're using a custom class, okay? So I have a custom hero 2, right? I don't want to use the same class we used in the last one. So I have hero 2 on this section, and I have a heading in here, and I have text in here. All right, so hero 2, we want to set the background color of hero 2, okay? So I want to use my BG dark, right? So I'm gonna come in and say BG dark on that hero. Notice when I use a variable on a custom class, the automatic color relationships don't work. Why is that? It's because a variable, the variable BG dark, a variable is only a placeholder for a value. It doesn't have any other superpowers. Classes have superpowers, right? So this is something important for you to understand. I'm going to have to set the text color manually. So I can right click on typography and I can set the text color. But again, I don't care what color. I just want, do I want light text or do I want do I want light text or do I want light muted text? Well, I want light text in general, but then I want to come here, and this might be the hero to _lead, right? And for that lead, I want text light muted. Okay, so this is how I'm managing, still using the contextual color system, but I'm doing it with a custom class, and I'm using variables now instead of utility classes. And I just have to understand that automatic color relationships can't work in that scenario, but I can still make everything work out exactly the way I want to using my custom classes and using variables, because the same contextual stuff that is available via classes is also available to you when using custom classes. You're just using variables instead of the utility classes. Okay, I think that's the full explanation of everything you need to know to get started. Again, this is a completely different approach. This is an approach you probably have not seen anywhere else. I've been deploying this approach on real websites. I can tell you it's faster, it's easier, and it's more flexible. Once you wrap your brain around it and you understand what's happening and you understand the abstraction, okay, let's go back into the dashboard. Really, it's in this backgrounds and text area. You're abstracting into dark, ultra dark, light, and ultra light. So you're simply just assigning colors to these new placeholders. And then in text, you're assigning colors to dark, dark muted, light, and light muted. And then you're determining when you do use utility classes, what you want, how you want your automatic color relationships to behave. Now, I will tell you this. This is the beginning of this contextual system. We are going to be expanding the contextual controls into, for example, links. Like what happens to a link when you use an ultra dark background utility class? What happens to a button when you use a ultra dark background utility class? And by the way, when there's a scenario like here, for example, or here, we'll add an accent heading, right? So let me make this an accent heading. All right, we'll do FR accent heading. And let's say we want our FR accent headings to be our primary color. So I can right click and say primary. See, that is when I go choose a specific color, right? But when I'm doing the bulk of my backgrounds and the bulk of my text, that's where the contextual system really comes into play. And it doesn't stop you from moving outside of the contextual background system. So there are no limitations to doing things this way. There's only new advantages, okay? And there is a little bit of nuance and there is a little bit of gray area that you're gonna learn how to manage and figure out how you wanna manage for yourself based on your own personal preferences. But this is an introduction to our contextual color system for backgrounds and text in automatic CSS. And this is the system that I would recommend you move forward with because of its unique advantages. If you have any questions, drop comments below or ask for help in the support community. We are happy to jump in and help you out. Cheers.